quickly they want to go, but it's chopped off by McCluggage in a crucial area of the ground. He bangs it long inside 50, and Bailey! Jackson flicks it over. Switkowski over his head. Sam Switkowski! Now Clark unleashes the kick. They need a mark. Amos! Over the top with just seconds remaining. Got to get at the back now. Danaher. He'll roll onto that left boot, and from 50, it goes long and very strong. That'll give the Lions a lift.
Times throughout his career.
Lions got creative. Bang! Warner copped a heavy bump from McCarthy. It was tremendous courage to go back. McCarthy spun in the tackle, but got it to Hipwood. Can he unleash from 50 metres out? That's a sensational strike from Eric Hipwood for his third. Sarong gets it to Frederick on the burst from long range. Lets it launch, coming back. Oh, Freddie flushed it.
The Brisbane Lions Fancast is back for another week where we are left to ask ourselves a series of questions. Is the break between the grand final and round 0 too short? Have we achieved all we can achieve? Is it time to have a look at some different lineup options? All these questions and plenty more are the questions we never thought we'd be asking ourselves the first 2 rounds in the season. But would you believe the bye has come at the right time, which is a very odd thing to say after 2 games of football. We're left lamenting 2 pretty horrible losses. It's up for debate which one you think is worse. Personally, Sunday was much worse in a lot of different ways for me, but let's have a look at it, see what we can come up with, give some votes, make some changes, get to a lot of questions that we've got through from people. And we'll, of course, touch on the recent decision by the Queensland government to just abolish any sort of new stadium thing as well. Patrick, mate, we've left this one till midweek to let that loss marinate for a little bit and let people grieve. How are you feeling a few days after the fact?
I'm all right. Like, I got to say, like, with the fixture list this season, I was pretty, like, outspoken about the idea of having a bye in round 2. Being like, what? Like, the Melbourne clubs virtually get their seasons chopped into thirds, but now could not be happier. So I think you hammered the nail on the head there. Yeah, look, I did put in the request on Sunday night to push this back, given the bye, and basically because I didn't really want to talk about it on Monday morning. Just because it sucked.
It certainly did.
You know, why would you want to talk about it when you can think about it and come up with some really good, terrible hot takes and get a lot of, there wasn't enough time to get like questions and people, etc. So we've made the decision for a midweek.
Yeah, and I think that's fine because a lot's happened in the last couple of days as well. Every media organisation is talking about both Brisbane and Collingwood starting the season 0 and 2. Talks of grand final premiership hangovers. The Tasmania team got launched. We have found out that Connor McKenna will be missing for another 3 or 4 weeks. Darcy Gardner's done a knee, albeit a little less significant than others. Our backline, which looked stacked at the start of the year, is suddenly in absolute disarray. And if we start back at the selection table Thursday, Friday, Jack Payne dropped a bit of a statement from Fags, which we rarely see after he had an absolute mare against Carlton. As they say, hindsight's 20/20. Probably the wrong decision because we really could have used an extra key defender against Fremantle because they took full advantage. They swung Brendan Cox up forward to take care of Harris Andrews, who had a great game, by the way. Harris, he was probably one of our best on. But then Darcy goes down with the knee, Connor McKenna goes down with a hamstring, and we are left absolutely scrambling to fill a back 6, back 7, and Kai Lohmann and Jared Berry simply are not the answers.
Oh, God, no. No, they're not the answers. Definitely not. It also gave a lot of people that were kind of skeptical about the Darcy Gardner forward experiment, what for in terms of that wasn't happening. I don't know, but I didn't really notice Rayner. I didn't notice him attending too many centre bounces, and he played up forward and was pretty anonymous in terms of impact. And I think that's a game he really could have impacted on in the centre of the ground. So As I've said, that PCL has pinged, and I don't think we'll likely see Rayner in the middle for the short term, which sucks because, there's a lot of fanfare for it every year, almost.
Yeah.
And they just seem to be unwilling to pull the trigger because of, obviously, it seems strange because, whilst I think the pain dropping was probably because of the thought that Fremantle were not quite as high or taller forward line, liked Noah Answorth back in the team. It was an interesting thing and interesting call and something that I read about in the week. But I thought he was perfectly serviceable and fine and should hold his spot and probably, given the circumstances, will hold his spot. We also don't know the extent of Jasper Fletcher's injury because I noticed him clutching at a calf. Darcy Wilmot pulled up at some point in the game as well. And for the general media to sort of talk about how it was an absolutely injury-ravaged Fremantle, we were hit as bad, if not worse, just not as egregiously in the visual sense. So,
yeah, injuries were less significant, but there were probably a few more that added up. And Charlie Cameron was also spotted throughout the week with a bit of a limp at the airport as well. So thankfully we've got the bye, so maybe those little niggles like Charlie Cameron, maybe Jasper Fletcher, they can sort of correct themselves over the next fortnight before our game against Collingwood. But yeah,
fortnight, aka 9 days or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it may be.
I haven't had the wherewithal to go and actually check some of the, for example, Collingwood's bye. I'm sure they play a Friday night and then they don't play the following week and then they don't play until the Sunday the following week. So they've actually got 17 days off, but I haven't looked at that. Just assuming
they started the year with 3 6-day breaks or 2 6-day breaks, so 3 games in 12 days or something. So they're off to a pretty fully packed start, and then they're playing again on Thursday night against the Saints. And I must say, and where do you sit on this? I hope Collingwood get the win on Thursday night to take the pressure off them a little bit, get the monkey off their back. I'd rather that than the pressure mount for another week and then they come up here with a huge point to prove against us. So I'm happy for them to get the win this week and maybe have them relax heading up here.
Yeah, I don't really care. Either way, it doesn't matter. The thing is, I still think that there's signs that our best football is still impossible to live with in terms of, I know that our scoreline in the first quarter was kind of inflated with a couple of free kick goals, but I still think that the way we were playing in the first quarter was, impossible. They just sort of... Did they get 2 goals, Fremantle, at the end of the first quarter? It was just here we go again.
No, I don't believe so. I think we went in with they may have got 1, but from memory, I think it was 27-2 or something like that.
They got 2 in red time.
Yeah, so, of course. Yeah,
red time. Apparently, I think Grasshopper said in the chat that they kicked 56 points in red time. So classic.
Yep.
Classic. But yeah. So just going back, the players ins and out. Neil missing with a hamstring, which he would have been useful in the game, obviously.
100%. Because the midfield is where we got absolutely hammered.
Well, it remains to be seen as to whether Dev Rob would have come in as well. Dev Rob was fairly anonymous, but also playing forward of centre.
Yep.
For the first half until he got put onto Sarong, which I thought actually worked pretty well.
Yeah.
In the third quarter. But I think I said to you that game was more or less summed up by Sarong at 5'10", taking a contested overhead mark in our defensive 50 or in defensive 50 or something like that. I was just like, man, how is that happening? That should not be happening.
Yeah.
But we'll probably get to that.
It was plenty of anomalies, but yeah, the midfield is where there's probably 2 games in a row. The midfield has been the source of where we've fallen apart. Our best players this week were defenders or forwards. Both key forwards actually had pretty decent games. It's very rare that Hipwood and Danaher kick 3 goals apiece and we walk away with a fairly convincing loss, which is quite strange, but good to see them get on the board. Charlie is a shadow of himself at the moment. He's that horrible sooky body language is creeping back into the game and missing some very, very simple set shots that he would normally nail 9 times out of 10. So there's something going on there. Link is he's been fairly solid the first couple of weeks, but our midfield is just, the midfield mix. Obviously, JL held his spot this week. Whether that would have been the case, it's easier to stomach without Neil in the team, because they play.
It's really not. It's really not.
not for you. We know where you stand, but the midfield mix. I don't think those two play in the same team, so I don't think he'll hold his spot. I mean, he shouldn't hold his spot, and obviously, we're not alone in those thoughts with JL. But just the midfield looks very sluggish. And the questions are just being asked like, did we just sit on our hands in the off-season thinking that we'd just walk into this year and it'd all happen for us? We'd just walk in and win these games. And whereas other teams have had the whole off-season to study Collingwood and come up with plans against it, and we haven't evolved with the game.
It's hard to say, but I don't honestly think that we're playing anything close to the way that we should be playing or we would want to be playing in terms of like our game style. This feels like we've regressed into like 2021 territory almost, or 2021, 2022, where it was sort of like, I think a lot of us sat and were sort of like, well, what are we doing? We're not really winning finals. We're kind of butchering stuff in the home and away, and it's causing us to finish lower than we should be. There were problems, particularly with centre clearance. And I think everyone looking for a scapegoat out there, they've got one, and it's JB, not you. Jared Berry is everyone's scapegoat, and they should be looking at a certain JL as the scapegoat, in my opinion. But it's a really hard one to look at because I just think that our game style is built so much on a quick transition and burst from stoppage and clean, brave disposal from defense to transition to attack, and almost a like modern take on Pagan's paddock up forward in terms of just isolating one-on-ones, because our forwards will often win the one-on-ones, and none of that is happening. A lot of our ball movement, particularly through one channel, is being stifled. In the midfield. And we're behind the ball. We're not anticipating. They don't trust each other. They're not working for each other. Oscar McInerney got taught an absolute lesson in following up. He might have had more hit outs, but Luke Jackson absolutely destroyed him around the ground. I thought Luke Jackson's follow up work was fantastic, and the sort of thing where you're like, okay, what's happening here? Like, the midfield group, whatever that combination is, which there's 4 of them, and that I would keep 3 of them, and that I'd pop one onto a SpaceX ship and send him off and not have him come back. But that combination just doesn't work. And, Neil, Lyons, Dunkley can't play in the same team together, but they tried that against Carlton and it didn't work. So, I don't know how we can have a revelation for Jared Lyons and take him out of the team pre-final series in 2022 before we had Dunkley, before we had Ashcroft. And I know Ashcroft is on the table at the moment, but to think that a reversion to that is in any way positive, particularly given the fact that in that particular offseason, Neil said, I'm struggling with my body. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to be quicker, stronger. I'm going to work on my defensive accountability in the off-season. And JL hasn't done that in either season. He still looks as slow as he's ever done. He has the same body shape. He has the same complexion. It's like, you've got an example right there. Double Brownlow medalist that said, I need to improve. And they went and they changed their diet. They changed their training routine and they improved. And I would be all for it if he did that. But he hasn't, so it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pulling my hair out here because I just think, I think that it just affects the game in so many different ways. Forward of the ball, it does, because Jared Lyons hits a lot of targets. He hits a lot of short kicks, but he never takes anything off. He's too slow on the way that he makes decisions going forward. There's corridor kicks he just doesn't take off because he doesn't want to turn the ball over, and that's fine, but it's not the way that we need to be playing. We're a low disposal, high impact team, and Lachie Neale's not getting 50 disposals anymore. He's getting mid 20s, and that's why a lot of people thought he wasn't deserving of the Brownlow. But his use of the ball has improved dramatically, and guys like McCluggage, they get mid 20s. Everyone gets mid 20s. When's the last time we've actually seen someone get 30 disposals in a game?
Yeah, it's few and far between, and when it happens, it does stand out, and it usually is a Lockie that pulls one out because we know that he can. I want to just harp back real quick before you get on your JL soapbox for any longer and talk about Big Oscar, because he has been a talking point the first 2 games is not performing the way that we know that he can. And we brought it up in the first episode that he's getting his hands to a lot of ball but not pulling down any marks. And case in point, that chest mark that got pinched from him in the forward 50 on the weekend. But it also got highlighted. Luke Jackson dragged him in as a sort of a full back and taught him a lesson in forward craft. And Luke Jackson had a great game, as he did against us last time we played in Perth. But here's a stat for you that was very surprising and sort of builds on what we were talking about in his marking ability. It's from one of the great Instagram pages, by the way, if you're a Lions fan, not following the Lions share, which I'm sure you are. I know you used to be heavily involved with them. In the last 5 games,
I used to do the food memes back in about 2017.
That's right.
I had some horror shows back then.
Have a guess at this. In the last 5 games, how many marks do you think Oscar has taken?
One?
2.
Oh, if we were playing Prices Right, I would have done all right.
Yes. No marks since the prelim, where he took 2 marks, and none against Port in the qualifying final as well. So 2 marks in 5 games for a man that we used to sort of fairly heavily rely on to drift up forward and clunk him. He's regressed in that, and I'm sure that can be corrected, and maybe it's just a bit of bad luck, but he's another one that is a shadow of his former self at the moment, and he's not alone. There is too many passengers around the ground underperforming.
Has he got his wrists taped?
I don't know from off the top of my head. If I'm imagining him, I can't see that. I don't think so. I'm inclined to say no.
Because my dad would be sending emails from the afterlife to try and get them to make sure that he's putting tape around the wrists, because that was always sort of a bit of security in the old... I mean, I always tape my wrists if I'm ever going out for a kick at the park. So just shows how much difference it makes. That's surprising whilst simultaneously being unsurprising, hey?
Yeah. It's alarming.
Yeah, it's not great, is it? Because also, you're like, what is it, 2 in the last 5 games? It's also 0 in the last 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
we like him.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we're both massive fans of Oscar McInerney, as most Lions fans and supporters and members are. But his first couple of weeks have left a lot to be desired. So hopefully that's something that can correct itself. But our backline, which started, as I said, stacked at the start of the year, was spoilt for choice to the point where we're flirting with the idea of Darcy Gardner going forward. Suddenly, Kadeen out, Kenny out, and Gardner all out, left scrambling, and I'm fully jumping on board the David King bandwagon here, and Dane Zorko needs to go behind the ball.
Yeah, I think
we need to now.
Just with the Coleman thing, I wrote that I thought that Zorko was most similar in terms of disposal and the willingness to take on the corridor kicks, but I thought that his defensive accountability might be a bit suspect. That was just keeping in mind a lack of Kadeen Coleman. Now without Coleman and McKenna, I think somewhere between that and it's tough. But does he have the body for the whole season? That's the thing I've got a question for. So he's looked pretty good so far.
Yeah.
So here's hoping he might be one that talking about JL's lack of adaptability to changing age changing age. Zorko seems to have put a lot of effort into that. So that Jackson Pryor's another option, which I know will have you clutching at your pearls.
Not just me. Here we go. Here's another question that I was going to save for later, but it's seeing as it's come up in conversation already. This is from Chris. Just wanted to ask what it is with Patrick's obsession with Jackson Pryor. The guy hasn't shown anything at AFL level, but Patrick talks him up every chance he gets.
I categorically disagree with that.
Now, I wouldn't say you're obsessed with Jackson Pryor, but you have given him the benefit of the doubt where I haven't and many others haven't.
I think that he's played about 3 bad AFL games, but they just happen to have been his 3 of his last 4 AFL games.
Yeah.
He's played more games than I think you would think. Let's have a look here. Doing some live.
He'd be around the 20 or 30 game mark. But his
bad games have been bad, but they've also come in bad performances.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a bit like it's hard to really judge that metric. And I know you could probably say it the other way around and go, okay, well, if his good games are when we're playing well and his bad games are when we're playing poorly. But that said, he had a bloody blinder against Hawthorn in Tasmania when we played poorly. So let's have a look.
Well, while you're looking that up, our backline, we didn't have to put Zorko behind the ball because McKenna was coming back. Now I think we're at the point where, yes, we'd love Zorko's use of foot forward of the ball, but we have to put him back now to plug that hole, at least until McKenna comes back, maybe a bit more long-term. There is a chance Duday comes back between now and the Collingwood game, and I would imagine Jack Payne comes straight back into the team as well.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. He's played 35 games.
Well, there you go.
So if he hasn't shown anything at AFL level in 35 games, I'll tell you where to go because I don't think that he's had 35 bad AFL games. And if we're going to go, with that in mind, he's played a lot in the twos in the VFL and he's consistently been a high performer in the VFL. People are always talking about Kyle Lemon being the next best thing, and he hasn't shown anything in AFL ever. Actually, ever. Hasn't had a good game, but he's shown plenty in the VFL. So I just think people judge players by different metrics depending on what suits their argument. So,
well, I mean, the bad games stick out. I guess that's what it is. The bad games stick out, especially after a loss. So, yeah, that game against Hawthorn last year will stick out to me as one of Jackson Pryor's absolute worst. And then that preseason game, he showed nothing as well. So, I'm reluctant to bring him into the team, like more reluctant than you or perhaps others are. I think we should try other options first. Tunstall, where does he fit into the team? Probably not as a halfback, but perhaps as a sub, because as you said, Lohman in the first 2 games has had moments where he's looked okay, but certainly, I guess, par, nothing above that. But he has also, hasn't risen to the challenge either. Maybe a full game at AFL, I don't know. But at this point, we can't be sort of taking gambles at the moment, and we need to find a win.
Yeah, it is a little bit tough to know what to do because do you stick or twist with certain players, and there's certain ones we want to twist on, and I think, like I wrote last week, I gave kind of pseudo pros and cons for each player to come in for Kitty Coleman, and I ended that article with an idea on a restructuring, which I thought probably could work in the short term, but then could have some detrimental effects going into next season or whatever. But there's no choice but to have that now.
Yep.
Because we've lost our 2 most aggressive ball movers. So, the changes will be interesting this following week. And I'm not overly looking forward to it because I think you never know. We could get the people's choices, and I'm sure it would be quite fun to do a people's changes.
Yes.
What do you think, Brooksy?
Well, we
nailed it. Absolutely nailed it last year.
Yeah, that's true. Whether we get to changes later in the episode or next week before the game against Collingwood, I'm not sure, but I don't know that it will I don't know that it will involve sweeping changes. That's not Fagan's style, unless he absolutely has to. I think there'll be a couple of necessary ones, obviously due to injury and stuff, but it won't be any more than that, I would have thought. I mean, just to stick on this Freo game, once again, the hot start, with 3 of those goals gifted to us by the umpires.
I mean, they were there.
They were there, but it gave us the false set. Like, it wasn't exactly the barn-burning start that we got against Carlton, where we just looked invincible. There was elements of it. Yeah, we trapped it in our forward half, and they could barely get it over, the centre circle for a period of time. But it wasn't as convincing as that start we had against Carlton, that's for sure.
No, I mean, I don't think that any team will play as hot a quarter as we did against Carlton in the whole year. So if that's the metric that we're looking at, it's a hard one to follow. But I think if we'd maintained the way we played in the first quarter for the game, then great. But I think my mum, actually, she didn't watch the game live. I've gone here. There we are. Hello. Greetings. My mum, actually, she didn't watch the game live. And I got a message from her saying, I'm halfway through the second quarter, and the writing is on the wall here. Is there any point in watching the rest of this game? Virtually, and I said no.
Spoiler alert.
So, yeah, I mean, well, she asked. So,
True.
But yeah, it's just that level of intuition of knowing where the game was going as it was happening is kind of becoming a bit of familiar territory for us a little bit. And like, it's the sort of game where, what were we, 20 points off in the end? It really glosses over some cracks, and I hope it's not the case, because I think that is one thing, levels of accountability within the team and sort of saying, like, are we actually challenging ourselves? And I think that Fagan copped a fair crack in the media last week when Neil came out, and I think the headlines for what Neil said were far more scathing than what he actually said. It was like, Neil criticizes lazy team and says they haven't won anything. And I'm like, yeah, he doesn't really say that. Like, that's not what he's trying to get across. He might use those words in slightly varied orders. But then for Fagan to come in and kind of take the ice off it when no one was putting heat on Lockie for that just seemed a little bit tone deaf.
It was very strange because everyone, and I try and consume and absorb as much footy media as possible, especially when it comes to Brisbane. Everything I saw about that press conference that Lockie did was like glowing. Everyone was surprised, proud, and impressed by Lockie's, candor. I didn't think Fags needed to come out and slam the media in the way that he did, which is a bit strange.
It just feeds into a lot of people that really sort of think that Fagan is too nice, or, the Fagan's favourites trope and stuff like that. It really played so much into that sort of thing. And it's like, what are you doing, dude? Like, let your leaders captain.
Yeah.
Or let your captains lead, and like back them and say, yeah, I'm happy that we have strong leaders that are willing to say what needs to be said to the team. Like, don't be like, oh, we all kind of know that. It's like, you're not making it easy for us to convince people that you're the right coach for the job.
Yeah, and obviously after a loss, there's a lot of people that come out with we need to sack Fagan, he's taken us as far as we can, haven't got the killer instinct, all that sort of stuff, all that same rhetoric that that appears after a loss. But I don't think that's there's any sort of credence to that. There's nothing going to happen in that respect anytime.
Well, I'd say there's no more credence to that than there would be anyway.
Yeah.
And we've talked candidly about it in the past, where I sort of think that he's coming to the end of his coaching career with us. And I think that, if he wins a flag, he will probably retire. And I also probably think that this will be his last year, but I don't think that's because he's lost his touch or because he's not a good coach. I think win or loss, it's probably the case.
Well, I think
there's no, like, I guess look at where we were to where we are now. And it's like,
it's easy to forget that, isn't it?
And he did that. He gutted the playing list. He created a winning mentality and a good club culture and attracted big players early on. Like, in his first 2 years when we were finishing bottom, Lockie Neal, Charlie Cameron, Probably some other guys I can't think of. But like they all came to the club knowing that like we were a mess in the 20 teens.
Yep.
Like, I mean, not obviously the last one of that.
And
Good.
they all said the same thing. It was a coffee with fags that got them over the line as well. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely easy to forget where we have been, and I guess it's also what makes this start to the year feel so much worse than maybe it actually is because the expectation and the hope for us coming into this year was it's basically a premiership or nothing. Like, that's the pass mark, which is a good position to be in, but it also invites this, this heinous sort of pressure, and every loss is scrutinized within an inch of its life. Whereas the reality is the start of this year, 0-2, is not too dissimilar to last year, not too dissimilar to 2021. We were 1-3 last year, and then that loss to the Dogs. Everyone's saying the same thing. We can't win a premiership with Hipwood and Danaher as our key forwards. Fagan this, Fagan that, whatever. It's 2021 the same thing. We started 0-2 and scraped into top 4 with that crazy win against West Coast towards the end of the year as well. So we've been here before. It just feels worse this year for some reason. I don't know if it's because of the nature of the losses or whether it's just the pressure and expectation of this on this team is just so massive.
I think there's an element of a lack of polish and professionalism around the way we've played these first 2 games, where you can kind of go, all right, they're getting there. They might have a misstep leading into this sort of thing, but it's really like we should be carrying ourselves better and we should be not really allowing this to happen. That's kind of the mentality around it, which whether is right or wrong is kind of neither here nor there, because they're kind of at the stage of they're talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk.
Yep. Well, that's it. And like all the talk over preseason, the word hungry was used so much. The way they addressed the grand final, and the famous meeting on the Wednesday after it, everyone wrote down what they didn't like, and then after the first loss against Carlton, Lockie comes out, goes bang and whacks, the team's performance, uses some, emotional language, uses lazy, uses selfish, shitting on your teammates, all that sort of stuff, and you think, yep, all right. Okay, show it to me now in a game against Fremantle, which everyone's, most people haven't got them in their top 8. Fremantle. There'll be the odd pundit that does, but generally speaking, it's a team we should walk away with the 4 points from, and then to show another performance very similar where we seemingly haven't learned that's what just makes it feel so much worse than it potentially is.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's 2 elements of the expectation. There's what we're bringing as fans and what they're putting down in the media. And I think they're kind of aligning, all things considered, in terms of what we're expecting and what they're expecting, but the performances don't dictate that. So that's what's making it hard, because I don't necessarily think that that's been the case in any other season. No. We haven't talked up. We haven't been talked up. We talked about a quiet preseason in terms of, anything said about us. But there was still a lot of people that thought we'd be a lot better than what we are at this point in time. And, I still think we'll finish in the top 4. I just think that things are going weird at the moment.
That's one way to put it. And I mean, yeah, there's in the back of my mind, there's that same faith that you've got that we will at least qualify for finals, but top 4 just feels so far off at the moment. And maybe it's one of those years that people are referring to, like the 2016 Richmond, where they made finals, dropped out, came back hard, or Geelong they made finals in 2004, 2005, dropped off in 2006, came back 2007. We know the run they went on. Melbourne drop off. There's cases of it that's happened, and maybe we're in for a year where we maybe don't make finals. I hate to think about it. And I guess the biggest fear for most Lions supporters is that we walk away from this 5-6 year period of being a dominant team with nothing to show for it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the perception of that and where we finished on the ladder doesn't lie, but I still am far less in like agreement with how long the successful time is. We've talked before where like normally, like let's take GWS for example, where they are now. They're kind of like everyone's second favorite team almost in terms of like, they're new and they're doing cool shit and they're playing really well. And it's like a new coach who looks like a security guard. And like Toby Green's turned from being an absolute fuckwit to being like pretty chilled and like a little ruddiger, and everyone's like, yeah, cool. If they do well, like if my team can't do well, whatever. We never got that.
I think we did. I think 2000.
No, we didn't, because 2019 we went out straight sets. No one gave a shit. And then in 2020, when the competition was in Brisbane, people were like, "Well, fuck you, Brisbane! Like you're getting this handed to you on a platter." And by that point in time, you've been there for 2 years and you're vilified. No one likes you. So it's a little bit annoying, and I still think that there's like a bit of a distortion of results. 2019 we overachieved massively in the home and away. And 2020, we got lucky with the fixture, got lucky with COVID. That sounds absolutely absurd to say. And I really think from 21 was when we were kind of actually expecting to win the Premiership or, challenge for a Premiership 1, 2, and 3. So it's the fourth year of 4, in my opinion, with 2 seasons that ordinarily would have been us finishing in the 4 to 8 position. We just spiked massively. So that's my opinion. I don't know if that's what anyone else shares, but it irks me a little bit to hear that we've been up the top for 6 years. It's like, we sort of have, but we technically have.
I mean, the reality is, we have, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
technically we have, but it's a circumstantial thing. It's not the case of just like, I don't know about you, but I might have said last week that I thought we'd win 14 games in 2019. I didn't think we'd win a premiership. I was like, finish in the top 8 and win a final. We never had that.
Yeah.
So, where to go from here? Get out the scythe and cut down some players.
Well, like I said, I don't think there's going to be massive sweeping changes from the team that took the field on Sunday. Just the ones out of necessity, with maybe 1 or 2, tactical changes in that. I don't think there's going to be 5 or 6. You may see 3 or 4.
3 or 4 is still a lot for us.
Yeah.
And I understand that it's a necessity thing, but...
well, I mean, 2 of them come from injury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose, yeah.
All right. Thanks to hoponbrewerytours.com.au.
He says regretfully.
No, let's do some votes, and I'm not letting you strong-arm me into giving all 3 Lions players votes. I'll give you 1. I'll give you 1 Lions player to give a vote, and that's going to have to be enough for you today.
Does that mean, do I have to vote for...
You can vote however you like. Yeah.
Can I be really petty?
Sure.
Yeah, hell yeah. Let's do it.
All right. 3 Sarong, 2 Luke Jackson, 1 Harris Andrews for me.
All right, fair enough. Well, I'm going Cox 3, McDonald 2, and Warner 1.
There's petty, and then there's that.
The last time I tried to do this, you cut it out of the final cut. GWS last week when I gave the dude that got bumped and did an ACL.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
But no. Yeah, Sarong, Jackson, and whatever you said. Yeah, look, let's be more real here, because you can't always be a funny asshole, but here we are. Because it is a Lions podcast, I'm going Hipwood 3, Harris 2, and Danaher 1.
Yep. And I'm not going to argue with that, being a Lions podcast. I do understand the thought process behind those ones. The silver lining, good to see our key forwards sort of do their job. And that's not to say they don't always do their job, but good to see them do their job and get reward on the scoreboard. It's just strange that both our key forwards are kicking 3 goals and we're not walking away with a win. As I said before, it's just it's an anomaly. But it just goes to show how well Freo played on the day, especially in the midfield, because I don't think we've had a vote for a midfielder in the first couple of weeks. Dunkley did his bit on the weekend, and McCluggage tried to get things going. He tried to bite off exciting kicks, and I don't know whether it was broken tackles. It just wasn't quite clicking. He wasn't getting that last 3% on his finishing work that he normally would. But he tried to get things happening, and it just wasn't our day in the midfield. That's for sure.
It's amazing what happens when midfielders are overcompensating for a midfielder that's not performing to an AFL standard. I want to just quickly say, Starcevic is interesting, our ship of Starcevic, because when we are set up and pressing and there's pressure on the ball, he is fantastic. But as soon as we're in a bit of in trouble, he tends to struggle. His one-on-one defending is not quite as good when it's not on his terms, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He's very much when he's dictating what's going on, he's great, because he was awesome in that first quarter. And then he just sort of, a bit a la grand final when he's under pressure and, he's not in control of what's going. It's a bit hard. So I feel bad for him because I think the pressure on the ball is one of the biggest issues for our defense.
100%.
And it's just not happening. So let's move on from that.
Well,
wreck.
That's it. The midfield just got walloped, and our backline from halftime onwards was just a complete mishmash. And suddenly Jared Berry's having to do so much more than he's capable of. Starcevic the same. They're suddenly getting asked to do much more than their normal job, and it just, you got Oscar floating down there. We're down to one tall key defender, with Leicester as the second key, when they've got Cox, Tracy, and Amos all down there as their sort of tall forwards, with Luke Jackson floating down there as well. So everyone was asked to do a little bit more than what they are generally capable of, especially for a full quarter performance, because McKenna goes down, because Gardner goes down, because we've dropped Payne and we've got no Coleman. So everyone's just asked to do that much more, and it just didn't happen.
Prune Tracy. That's all I could think of every time he got the ball. How good was Frederick's goal? Holy shit, he led with that.
Amazing, yeah. He's a very fun player to watch, Frederick, and I'm happy for him to do that against other teams. But yeah, fantastic goal on the run from outside 50. Brilliant.
See, it's kind of like a hindsight thing, but you look at it and go, okay, so... Because I said to you before the game, I was like, man, how good's old mate going to be against Brayshaw, Sarong, Fife, Hayden Young?
Yeah.
I was like, we're in trouble here.
It's a big physical midfield.
And you're like, maybe someone should have been like, hey, do you know who's basically the same size as Nat Fife, but a bit younger and equally as robotically mobile? Jared Berry. You know who's previously done tagging jobs pretty well? Jared Berry. Let's put Jared Berry on Nat Fife, simplify his game, and not put him at half fucking back. Okay, cool, good. Let's put Dev Rob on Sarong. Okay, cool. And then what have we got left? Dunkley against whoever.
Yeah.
Well, he can match up well, go head to head and win. It's not that hard, really. I know we talked last year about, do you always set up for the other team? But in this situation where it was bleedingly obvious that our midfield was not better than theirs, we should be playing to nullify their midfield and break even. Jeez. Sorry.
Yeah,
I've lost today.
In years gone by, we've been able to cover for Lockie not being there. I mean, there was that famous stretch 2 years ago where it was 6 or 7 games without Lockie, and we won them all, basically.
Yeah, it was Matho.
Yeah, Matho was the one that came in and filled the hole, and he was the guy that came in that 2022 final series that you speak about when JL got dropped as well. Not on the list anymore.
Call Wilston Grange. Get him back on a pay per play game like the 80s or whatever.
Well, mid-season draft, perhaps. We've got
No.
a spot or two. All right.
I've seen your Twitter post. I don't, or X or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to questions about the game.
All right. Thanks to Crisp Communications,
Move on.
crispcoms.co. Let's get into some questions. And I do have some good news. We have heard from our friend Capish.
Hey there, it's Capish. So, if you're wondering how I was doing after the choke in round 0, I was not doing well on the night, but I did manage to recover. But, fuck, we're 0-2. What do we do, guys? Like, I'm not sure if we're going to win the flag or not, because last time I checked, no team has won the flag from an 0-2 start. So, I mean, like, there's teams who have won the flag from a 3-2 start, but, like, yeah, I don't know what to say about this. Help me.
Cry for help at the end there from our good friend Capish. Good to hear from Capish. There was some genuine worry amongst our listeners when we hadn't heard from him for over a week, and where he sort of forecast what would happen after a capitulation. It sounds like wherever he is, he's having a very scenic, lovely walk in the morning. Got some birds in the background there, which was great. Yeah, 0-2 Premiership. It's not impossible, but yeah, the history says the odds are stacked against us.
They are, and harping back to his initial question, I think the one that I never heard, or I heard later, and it kind of had lost all of its potency at that point in time. The worst case scenario being a 3-2. Sorry, something just slammed. I don't know what that was. Being a 3-2, I was like, that's a very good worst case scenario.
Well, now it's our best case.
I looked at the fixture and I was like, even North Melbourne are not terrible. I mean, they shouldn't be terrible given they've got 7,000 number one draft picks. But I was very coy on the 3-2. And I thought that was quite a high expectation, which is probably befitting of a premiership favourite. But, fixtures will dictate and teams we're playing will dictate. Where do we go from here? We just have to be the best team in September.
I guess, yep, teams have proved that in the past, but yeah, like I said, at the moment, it just feels so far off.
It is. It's far off.
All right, our next Crisp Communications question comes from your brother. Now, this comes in two parts. So here's part one.
The grounds to me seem way too hard. What was there, 4 or 5 ACLs from apart from kiddies? They were all landing/pivoting issues. Hamstrings being torn off the bone from landing from marks. Impact from Callum Ward's shoulder. The grounds just have no give in them, and it's they worry about all these head injuries and stuff, but it's so clear that make the grounds fluffier. It's going to slow the game down, but we're going to have so many injuries in this area. So I'm just wondering whether you guys have noticed this. I'm not sure whether the stats say that it's anything abnormal, but so many brace injuries, which were serious, extremely serious. And I think we'd avoid a lot of concussions as well.
Yeah, there you go. I did.
Hard to argue in terms of the sample space. What were you going to say, Brooksy? Sorry.
Yeah, I hadn't drawn the conclusion of, relating, because I did think to myself after that Richmond-Carlton game, I was like, geez, 3 ACLs already in 5 games now. Oscar McDonald's gone down with 1, and that Callum Ward one. I didn't sort of draw the parallels between ground hardness and injuries, and maybe there's something there to it. If the goal of the AFL is to get the game moving faster, maybe that's a directive to groundskeepers to keep the grounds a bit harder, to allow for that. I don't know.
So let's put it in perspective here. So at the MCG, we had Taylor Swift performing 2 weeks out from AFL.
Yep.
Pink was at Marvel. We had a World Wrestling pay-per-view in Perth, Elimination Chamber at Optus, and that was talked about jokingly on commentary, and I did enjoy Link McCarthy's spine buster. That was great, but yeah, the ground seemed to be hard because they're doing other shit there. More than anything, like the two ones that happened at the Gabba, the Coleman one was an impact, and the Doherty one was less. It wasn't a landing one per se. So, it's definitely. I feel like there's been more stuff like that already this season, and if you're going to put it down to it being a short off season or that sort of thing, I don't necessarily buy into the short off season because I watch a lot of Premier League and association football. So it's like those guys, they play from fucking their season's August all the way through to April.
Yeah.
So they get May, June, July off. And oftentimes there are international tournaments within that bracket. So you can condition yourself quite quickly these days. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. So
I mean, you could argue you don't need necessarily, you need athleticism for, soccer, football, but you don't need the physical strength as well. As much. You don't need it as much for a full contact sport like AFL.
True. But it's probably equally as demanding on limbs, particularly I've found that I've had a lot more lower leg injuries playing soccer than AFL, and that's because you've got people literally kicking your legs.
Well, that happens too. Just ask James Sicily.
Yeah, I mean, we're not kicking the ankle. He was going more for the old up and under. The last time I did that to someone was indoor soccer, and I got a blue card.
Yeah, well, apparently you
went from the field for 4 minutes.
Wow.
And I came back on, and it was funny. But yeah, no, I think that's something to be put on watch, and I think that it's probably the monetary reward of Taylor Swift playing free concerts or whatever at the MCG is probably worth more than the ACL of a couple of players. Which seems insane.
It does. And yeah, look, I don't know. It's getting into tinfoil hat conspiracy theory for me, but maybe there's credence to it as well. So I don't know. It's for smarter minds than I. Here's the second part of your brother John's question.
Why is Lions in the team? I just don't understand. I'd rather we had the chance to walk away with a couple of losses anyway if we were struggling in certain areas, and we could have blooded some kids through there and given a few different looks to our midfield. And he just is so catastrophic to the balance of the team. It's so obvious, and he's no pressure. So yeah.
All right. Well, I
want to caveat this. We have not talked.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
we haven't talked. I've been busy with stuff, so we haven't talked about this. All I got from him was because he was at work, I think, for the first few quarters of that game, listening on radio, and he came home and he said, "I feel so bad that you've had to watch this guy play the whole game." And I said, "It looked so good after 8 seconds. It looked so good." I was like, "Cool, concussion protocol. He'll go out. Beautiful."
All right, well, I'm going to limit your time here because I know you could do a full podcast on Jared Lyons' vitriol here.
The Jared Lyons experience coming on Patreon. No, I'll say, yeah, I agree. And I think it would have been, a bit more circumspect to maybe blood some younger guys. But I think also we probably expected to win these games. So, yeah, I don't know why he's in the team. I wouldn't have him anywhere near my team. I said that last year. I said that this year. And that's about that.
All right. Continuing with our Crisp communication questions, crispcoms.co, who are giving you free stickers, by the way. Check out our website, brisbanelionsfancast.com.au. Free Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers thanks to Crisp Communications. All right. Liam on Instagram. Interstate teams have a history of collapsing after a grand final loss. The list is in a strange position now. Do we think Fagan's method is the way forward, or has he taken us as far as he can? Also, who does Duday come in for? Now, I think, just quickly, Duday, Gardner, straight swap at this stage.
Yeah, well, is Duday's hoping, I think, to come in for Easter Thursday, but who knows whether he will.
Yeah.
Has Fagan taken us as far as he can? It's within a goal of a premiership, so it's kind of like, technically, yes, because we could have won that game under, a bunch of different circumstances. But also, does that really matter? I'm asking you a question.
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, yes. Like I said before, like many other fans and members, it's going to be a really horrible feeling to walk away from this stretch of sustained success with nothing to show for it. And, Lockie said as much in his press conference as well. We know we haven't achieved anything yet. So,
I suppose most of what I'm saying is like, it's almost like the implication of he's taken us as far as he can is more of a negatively connotated.
Yeah.
To go literally from the bottom to within a point, like, a laughing stock to within one kick of a premiership is pretty good. And I don't think really many coaches surely have gone from literally a wooden spoon to a grand final or a premiership. Surely not. I'm sure there would some that have done that.
Yeah.
But like, we want to win a premiership. I'm not saying that we don't want to win a premiership, and I'm not saying that anyone or Fagan doesn't want to win a premiership. We all want to win a premiership, and that's what they're trying to do. But has he taken us as far as he can? Probably, but I think that means that we could win a premiership because that's what nearly happened last year, and that's what the expectation has been. Yeah, there's frustrations with the level, like with the coaching style and stuff like that, but it's not just him making the decisions.
No. And, that stuff on the weekend and in the Carlton game, that comes down to, on-field leaders as well. And for a team that has half their list in the leadership group, there is a noticeable absence of, other than Harris Andrews, of, the Patrick Dangerfield type, the Paddy Cripps type that says, all right, boys, come with me, let's get this done, and, leads by example. We just don't seem to have had that in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it's mainly been palpable with the speed of the game and the momentum of the game. But, who would have thought that we would cough up 8-goal runs in back-to-back games, given that was like something that we'd actually actively worked on not doing last year. And I know that Carlton had their little thing in the prelim, but it was sort of a bit like, I feel like I felt at the time that was the anomaly, but it turns out it might not have been, and we were just able to wrestle it back a bit better. But Dode comes in for Gardner. And probably Payne comes back in as well,
Yeah, I'd say so too. Reese on Instagram, should we be trying to build our leadership with Neil and Andrews? I don't feel like they are best suited or even to the standard of being in a leadership role. Feels like we're missing those leaders that many clubs have and look up to. Do we look at giving the captaincy to someone else? I'd say that's fairly reactive, especially when it comes to Harris, because he, for me, is, especially in the first two games, that he has stood up on occasion. But yeah, I don't know that we need to be handing the captaincy off to anyone else at this stage, or...
No, I don't think so. It's purely, it's reactionary and it's fine. But if you look at it, I think you're right. Harris has been one of our better performers in the first two games. Lachie Neale had probably his best captain's moment in that press conference and then didn't play.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I personally don't think that Lachie Neale is the right individual for a captain. If he was the sole captain, I feel like I'd be like, it doesn't really make sense. I do think that Harris has got like big Shannon Hearn energy going forward. So I think there's kind of, this is one of the things that feeds into it with Lachie Neale, is like, captain's not your best player. Like, it shouldn't necessarily be your best player. It should be the one that sets the tone for the team.
Yep.
We were just kind of, it just happened to be that, Voss was the best player for a long period of time. But you could even argue in the Premiership years, he wasn't actually our best player. He was the best captain in the game, but Black was probably better at times. Ackermanis was probably better at times, and we just had Brownie, who was our best player because it was fucking Jonathan Brown. And then it was sort of like, shit, what are we going to do? Put Rockcliffe in, put Beams in, put Zorko in, and they were all our kind of best players at the time. So I don't think captains have to be the best player, and I think that's something that is kind of Sorry, I'm like, I feel like captains are more important in AFL than they are in a lot of other sports, and a lot of other sports tend to put the best players as captains.
Well,
despite leadership,
it's a tough balance, I suppose. You've got to, and I guess this is where co-captains comes in handy for us because it sort of ticks both boxes. Where you look at some Premiership captains in Tom Harley and Nick Maxwell, by no means the best player on their list, and often criticised back in the day of like, why have you got this bloke as your captain? But obviously internally very highly rated, great leaders, and I guess that's Harris for us as well. He's just got the gift of being a very elite key defender, whereas Lockie is the guy you can wheel out in front of the media as you're like, here's our shiny new best, dual Brownlow medal winning captain. Look how good he is. Look how good we are. So I guess we sort of tick both those boxes in that way. We have got the best player to do that, whereas we've also got a genuine bona fide leader in Harris as well.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, I don't think they should be losing the captain anytime soon.
No,
unless they bring back like Luke Hodge.
All right.
Mid-season draft.
Mate, honestly, it'll be interesting to see what we do with that. Miller Time on Twitter or X. Would it kill us not to suck at the start of every year? It's such a crap way to start the season. Yep. Agree.
Yeah, no, agree.
Not much more to say there. But yes, fully agree there. Brad also on Twitter. I'm going to try not to complain too much because we all know how disappointing that was. But what are your thoughts on the following? Lohman, Gardner, Answorth, Berry. To me, they are all droppable. Some really poor performances, and Charlie's goal kicking. What the hell? Harris was good. He finished there. So let's go through them one by one. Kai Lohman.
Drop.
Darcy Gardner.
Injury,
immaterial.
But also not drop.
Yeah. Noah, I'm keeping.
Because he had 100% disposal efficiency at 15.
Well, there you go.
And also, he put himself around and he's nimble and he makes decisions quickly.
And the last one is obviously a talking point for Lions fans all over the world is Jared Berry.
Keep but simplify.
Yeah, I
feel like he gets absolutely stitched up by the coaches. Whether it's like they think he's some sort of cerebral genius, which he's not. I think you said his footy IQ is terrible. And I think it's a bit better than terrible, but it's not too far off terrible. But don't give him complicated things to do.
Yep. Footy IQ and disposal are obviously not on the high level of scale there. So,
do you know what I'd say? If you were someone that had a not great disposal and a lower than average footy IQ, let's play halfback.
Yeah.
In our team.
When you need both of those things.
Yeah, when you need quick transition, quick decision making, and a penetrating kick. No. Don't do that.
Yeah, he's got a big tank. His fitness is up there. Yeah, he's definitely suited to midfield, wing, forward of the ball. I think I don't see him getting dropped. I would be genuinely surprised if Fagan does pull that trigger and drops Jared Berry. But I don't see it happening, and I think, I'm with you. He needs to be moved. He's not a defender. He's not a halfback player. JC, and we've already spoken about this to an extent on the show. Please talk about Big O's taps to disadvantage.
Yeah. Actually, there was one that was insane. I don't know if you remember, but he's there. The midfield three are literally all in front of him, and he taps it behind himself.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? what was that? Like, it's like are you expecting your winger to sprint like a madman the 20 odd meters? No, dude. Yeah. But the midfield combination.
Yeah, and as we've discussed, O's had a poor start to the season. He's had a poor start to the season, and I can't see that being the standard. I think he will lift like others need to and will. But yeah, not a great. And that 2 marks in 5 games, that's rocked me a little bit.
Yeah, 0 marks in 3 games. How about that?
Yeah. All right, and I actually had a nice little chat to a fella called Jackson last night who sent us a message on Facebook just saying, hey, when's the...
Pryor?
Huh?
Pryor?
No, not Jackson Pryor. I'm not going to give away his last name here on the show because that's just...
So if you're trying to find this man, his name is not Jackson Pryor.
It's not. He was keen to know when the podcast was coming. And I had a chat to him. I was like, yeah. We ended up talking for 5-10 minutes. He said, "How would you feel?" And I'm paraphrasing here. It would be nice to have a Mitch Hinge in our backline at the moment.
I mean, yeah, it would.
Yeah. In
the similar sense that it would have been nice to have Ben Keys last year or whatever, but no. If we had Coleman and McKenna and Wilmot, probably not.
True. Yeah, it's one of those situations where you sort of look back on what you could have had at the moment, and as I said to Jackson in the chat, there, it's really good to see him and Ben Keys and Tom Berry at the moment get a good crack at it and play some decent footy. So it's good to see that sort of stuff out there at the moment.
Beautiful stuff.
All right, let's get to changes, and we can maybe revisit this next week before the game against Collingwood. Changes, obviously, for me, Payne comes in for Gardner. Lions goes out, as does Lohman, and obviously Kenny goes out as well. So Payne in for Gardner. I think Tunstall gets a run in some way, probably as the sub. Duday also comes in, and Zorko gets shoved behind the ball, and Neil comes in for Lions.
Yeah. I'm trying to get Jackson Pryor in the team. That's what I'm trying to do.
I mean, he could be your Tunstall potentially for Lohman, and then whether he starts as sub is immaterial.
Yeah, I'm just sort of like having a look at this bloody list of players, eh?
So there's 4 changes for me.
So you've got your 3 halfbackers being Zorko, Wilmot, and Answorth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we've got Stas and the 3 keys. Where Duday is not necessarily massive, and he can intercept, and he's a fairly decent ball user. Whether he's going to be able to do all that game 1 after a second ACL, probably not. But we need to get him into the team and into our system sooner rather than later.
Yeah. What did you think of the idea of Ryan Lester as a halfback, given that his disposal and his willingness to take the ball on was quite good at times last year?
Yeah, well, I think he stays down there as well. I think he stays down there. Lester holds his spot for now. The only time he doesn't is when we've got McKenna and Coleman in the team as well, as Duday, as Payne, as Harris. So for now, he holds his spot because he's just a solid contributor. He's an old school footballer. He does the basics well. He rarely loses a one-on-one. He uses the ball safely and does bite off 45 kicks. They're not long ones. They're usually sort of 20, 25 metre ones, but he doesn't turn it over. Everyone loves Froggy because you know what you're going to get.
I mean, you didn't. Now that you do, people love Froggy.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so... Yeah, Payne, Duday, Neil... I'd throw Pryor in there because, I don't know, it's funny.
Because you're obsessed with him.
people up. And I've also the people's change has gone dictated Sharp over Berry.
Sure, yeah. I mean, he's just as likely as Tunstall for me. It'll be one of Tunstall or Sharp in for Lohmann. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like if Charlie Cameron's not there, then Lohmann probably sticks and plays, higher forward. So it's like we will revisit this next week, I assume.
Yeah, I dare say we'll have a little bit more in-depth chat about any sort of changes that may or may not be made. A few little other things going on in the world of the AFL. Obviously, Tasmania launched on Monday night, which is huge news for the competition. They've already got over 100,000 members, this guy being one of them. $10. And I'm obviously not alone there. It was obviously a very popular thing to do. Thoughts briefly on the design, colours, logo, Guernsey?
There was some pretty funny, I saw it and I was like, the hell is that? Initially, whilst, yes, it was a state of origin Guernsey back in the day. I think that's when, sewing machines were fairly limited in what they could do. The big Sanskrit T was pretty funny. It's like, go the T's.
Yep.
There was a lot of funny stuff about that. Colours are fine. I don't know which egghead thought doing a green logo on a green background was a good idea, but here we are. Yeah, it's good. It's oh fuck, that's a cat. Jeez. She just licks me on the elbow. I can't even do that to myself. Yeah, it's fine. It's good.
Yeah.
I think there's not really too much more to say about that. Richo looked absolutely thrilled to be there. Yeah, it's good to see a green team in the. Well, at least I could drop the T there. I think the Guernsey will probably be different anyway. Even just the way that Tasmania looks like it was done by a small child. So, it's funny, but don't mind.
Yeah,
it'll probably look good.
Yeah, look, it's the. I mean, I quite like the logo, albeit it looks like one of those AI-generated Twitch streamer sort of esports logos. I quite like it. Yeah, I thought they might be a little bit more daring with the Guernsey, but I do understand the tradition and it holds a special place for those, rooted in Tasmanian football history, so I'm not going to complain too much about it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds over the next 5 years, and at some point I'll go down to the stadium and see my name written there in size 6 font as one of the foundation members.
That sounds good. So, do we want to talk about the Gabba stuff next week? We're pretty long.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I just do that.
And it'll give us some shit to talk about as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't know fucking anything about it other than because every article I clicked on was like, the Courier Mail wants your money.
Of course
Sunday Herald. And I'm like, fucking, I'm not paying you money, you dogs. Like, give me 4-person news and I will consume it. Look at this guy.
Meow. We will get to Gabba Stadium chat next week, but if you do want sort of a comprehensive chat about it, always check out The Raw Deal. Those guys have been on it for months and months, and they do a much better job than we ever could as well. So I'm sure everyone listening already listens to The Raw Deal.
To another channel.
No, more content the better, and I'm sure everyone listening already listens to The Raw Deal, and they are all over that, especially Dom. So we will have our 2 cents on it next week, but we're in for a long one for us. Don't forget to check out the website, brisbanelionsfancast.com.au. That's where you can get yourself a free Brisbane Lions Fancast sticker, thanks to Crisp Communications. It's also where you can enter the raffle to win a double pass to the Q Clash in round 8, which at the moment, I don't know, is looking very, very scary with the way the Gold Coast are playing at the moment. So you can...
An 8-pointer, that one.
Yeah. Don't forget, you can also join the Patreon from there as well. There's a bunch of bonus and exclusive content there, including the article that Patrick wrote last week that he's been referring to. And is there going to be another one this week?
10 Things I Hate About You featuring Jared Lyons.
There you go. Well, there's
No, that's not going to be it. If to our Patreons out there, if you want me to write about something, let us know and I will try.
Yep.
If it's a horrible topic, I will maybe give you some stick, but we'll try because it's I think we're saying like it's not easy to come up with stuff to write about like all the time because I don't probably have the amount of knowledge and that sort of thing. But we give it a red hot crack.
And just one final quick thought. Sicily escaped the ban for the shoulder charge and kick. Thoughts on that? Right decision? Yes?
I mean, it was funny, but like, it doesn't really pass the eye test.
No.
Of like, you've run in and kicked a dude. Like, cool. Like, I thought we were trying to get rid of unfootball-like acts that we didn't want in the game.
Yeah.
I think that Sonny Walters should have done a week, to be honest, because I thought intentional trips were a week. Since the dawn of time. I remember that's Dustin Fletcher's only suspension was a trip that he didn't even realize he'd done in 7 million games. I don't know where the kick trip went from being not a suspension.
Yeah. It's
unintentional, fine. Fine for a fine. Intentional, give him a week.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised and disappointed in that one, to be honest. It could be a little bit of me just genuinely disliking Sicily as well that's creeping into my thought process there. So, I thought that would stay as a week. Hewitt escaped. Mason Redmond for a fairly similar action copped a week. So, already a couple of weeks in, there's some inconsistency.
Yeah. The Mason Redmond one was barely that. And also the other guy went for his head first. So it's like, the retaliator gets done every time.
Well, that's it. Stay tuned. We'll be back next week with a preview for Collingwood. We'll chat about the stadiums, and there will be more videos popping up this week on our Patreon channel as well. So all that can be found at BrisbaneLionsFancast.com. Do all the links you're looking for, including those stickers, including your chance to win a double pass of premium tickets to the Q Clash in round 8 as well. Once again, massive shout out to hoponbrewerytours.com.au. Book yourself a half or full day tour through those guys right now, and of course Crisp Communications that are going to be delivering you those fantastic stickers as well. Until next week, my friend.
Yeah. That was a big stretch.